Holes is a film that has some sort of historical significance in your life. And if you disagree, you're lying to yourself. The significance that it has in my life is back in first grade, I watched it the first time because our class did a film the book back-to-back double whammy of it. And that was the last time I felt something. And so I decided to rewatch it for the first time in 10 years because it felt like it was just speaking to me. It felt like it was begging to me, pleading on its knees, saying, please, just give me another chance. And you know me, I'm a man of second chances. So I say, hey, what the hey? Let me hop down and jump into this hole. And so I do. I dig. And I dig deeper and deeper until my bones are weak and the golden hue of the sun conceals itself in the nighttime sky. And I keep going because there's something that's pushing me. And so I dig even deeper until my hands are sore. As I have fulfilled my mission, I hop into this hole that I've created, burying myself within the constraints of the dirt walls until I feel like I am one with the hole. I also just kind of watched it again because I thought it'd be kind of funny for a video. Thought it'd be kind of goofy. And yeah, it definitely is a goofy movie, but considering it came out 20 years ago, I think it holds up like surprisingly well. And I think it's due to the main creatives who are behind this film, as it's directed by big-time Hollywood movie director Andrew Davis. Maybe not big time anymore, but big time back then, back in 1993 when he was pumping out The Fugitive starring Harrison Ford. And the movie's also written by the original author of the Holes book, which makes sense because this movie, as from what I can remember, it is like pretty on point with what happens in the book, from the storyline, the characters, specific jokes. Real fans and real Holes heads can let me know if that's right. And speaking of right, let's just jump right into this hole. Whoa, segue alert. Oh, segue, wait. Segue alert. First minute and 50, and this movie pushes you into this film, basically setting up the tone and style of what's to come throughout the rest of the film, because it starts out Camp Green Lake, population, too many sweaty little boys that are unnecessarily digging holes for greedy old dudes. And we take a look at Barfbag, and this is our first and only look at this character because for the rest of the film, he's not seen but only mentioned because of the horrible incident that we're here to see, which is that he sells his soul to the devil, also known as putting out his little piggies out for a snake to take a sniff. Directly after this, we get a shot of sneakers being thrown directly into the sky. Shout out to this cinematic parallel that foot fetish people will love. What I realized about this film on second watch is that there's so much just stuff crammed into this movie that's barely 2 hours long. And they have to set up so much that at the beginning, it kind of is like surprisingly overwhelming of how much they're setting up and everything that's going on. It's ridiculous. Because we have Stanley Yelnats the fourth. Keep that in mind. He's number 4, played by Shia LaBeouf. And he is wrongly accused for stealing these sneakers from a famous athlete. And so the cops come to his apartment to investigate. And while this is happening, we're being introduced to Stanley Yelnats' family and his father, Gene Cousineau, who's actually a failed inventor who is struggling to find the cure for foot odor. They love feet. So because of that, the apartment really stinks. So much so that the landlord is threatening to kick them out because the apartment smells so bad. Gene Cousineau asks the officers, he's like, hey guys, do you want to sit down? Maybe I can smell your feet. Take off your shoes, smell your feet.
Now that is a fine pair of shoes. Could I just smell your shoe? How about if you take your shoe off and I'll just...
And this is only the beginning of the film. So Stanley is wrongfully accused. He goes to court and they're like, hey, we could send you to, prison or Camp Green Lake, where sweaty little boys dig holes for days. And Stanley loves camp, so he's like, Camp Green Lake. And so because this is a Disney movie that came out in the 2000s, Stanley has to get introduced to these crazy and kooky characters, but also the mean ones. Honestly, perfect casting for this character here. Mr. Sir, played by Jon Voight. Just looking at his face, he looks like the rudest actor alive. He could be a really sweet and genuine and nice guy, who knows? But just by looking at his face, he looks like he would be so rude to me. He looks like he would disrespect me so much so. We also meet the kids of the camp, and so they have to have some crazy, awesome nicknames, because that's awesome. That shit is tough. That shit goes hard when you have a nickname. And so we got X-Ray, who's the ringleader. We got Armpit, he's a funny one. He's kind of smelly. And then we also got Zero, who's kind of this quiet one. And we got Squid, he's kind of the wild card. And then we got Tostitos Doritos, who's kind of like the brains behind the operation. And then we got Barbie Dreamhouse, who is kind of the cool one. And then we got Wet Soggy Towel, who is kind of also the cool one. And we also got the smiley camp counselor, Dr. Podansky, which again is another perfect casting choice, because we got this guy played by Tim Blake Nelson who just radiates smiley, clueless guy vibes, because if there's a guy who I know is just going to be barrels of fun with some goofs and gaffs, it's going to be him. And so he's just kind of a wholesome guy who just wants to help these kids be better and do better for themselves, which is awesome.
Say hello to Stanley, Zero. You want to know why they call him Zero? Because there's nothing going on in his stupid little head. What the hell?
Okay, damn, I guess, I guess I take that back, just unnecessarily being, hateful to this poor little kid.
I like digging holes.
Then you're in the right place for it, buddy boy.
What makes this film unique is not just the Camp Green Lake stuff, but the insane lore and backstory that this film manages to fill into this film. Because this film does not have one backstory, but two. And these stories are filled with different characters that somehow connect to the main storyline within Camp Green Lake. And it's not exactly something that really takes away from the film, but it kind of adds to the film, and I'm really glad that they did decide to keep it in the movie, because it is a lot of stuff to add in it, but the film manages to pull it off with having, hints of pieces throughout. We cut from flashback to Camp Green Lake several times throughout, but it doesn't become too repetitive, I think, because the way they paced it and place it throughout, and also you kind of hint at little things that kind of connect to the overall story. They make it work. If you're not caught up with the Holes lore flashback stuff, let me catch you up to speed. We got flashback 1, which we see Stanley Yelnats stuff first. Now, why should we care about this? We should care because this is how we get to know why Shia LaBeouf's Stanley Yelnats is actually cursed. And how he got cursed is because Stanley Yelnats the first wanted to marry this woman. And he was like, hey, I want to marry this woman. What should I do? And the only way you can win a woman's love is the size of your hog. And, his hog was not that big. And so he had to go to local witch voodoo lady psychiatrist, Madame Zeroni. And Madame Zeroni says, hey, if you want to win the affection of this woman, you have to have a big hog. And so how you can do that is you go up a mountain every single day with the pig, and every time you go to the very top, you gotta give that pig a little drink. Give him a drink, he's thirsty. And then you keep on doing that, you get stronger, the pig gets bigger because of all the water, and then you show her your hog, and then she'll be impressed and want to marry you. And after Madame Zeroni gives all these steps for Stanley to take, she tells him, after you do all these things, you need to carry me up the mountain and give me a little drink. It makes sense because Brita filters, that wasn't a thing back then. And she says, also, if you don't give me a drink, I will curse you and all the future generations, which, that's pretty heavy stuff. However, the hogs are the exact same size. And so the woman's like, hey, how about you guys pick a number between 1 and 10, and then maybe I'll marry you. And then that's when Stanley Yelnats realizes, I don't want to marry this woman. She's so weird. Good for you, dude. Good for you. Let's go, Stanley. It took you a while to come to this conclusion, but, props to you, dude. So he's like, I gotta get out of here. And he does. But, dude, you forgot to bring Madame Rigatoni up the mountain, give a drink. He can't be drinking Dasani now. And so because of that, Stanley gets cursed. And now the future generations of Stanley is cursed. Okay, so now we know the lore from flashback number 1 with Stanley Yelnats. How about we speed run through the lore of flashback number 2 with Sam the Onion Man and Kissing Kate Barlow. Okay, so we got this guy Sam, and he's an onion man. He sells onions with his donkey. And he thinks these onions are magical, which, you know, sure, I guess. And he also sells lizard juice, which is crazy coincidence because Camp Green Lakes has lizards, and those are lizard juice. Sam rizzes up school teacher Catherine Barlow, and he's like, I love you, I can help you, I can fix you, I can fix that. Not only is Sam an onion man, he's a handyman. Props for you, dude. Literally being the best guy ever. But there's all these people that just don't like Sam the Onion Man. Maybe because he smells like onions. So then they kill him. And then Catherine Barlow goes rogue, and she is really crazy and becomes Kissing Kate Barlow, who is a cowboy who kills dudes, and then after that gives them a little smooch on the lips. Oh, that's very nice. And so because of that, we get some cool cowboy montages in the film. But back at the Green Lake camp, we get some silly and funny times with these sweaty little guys. They do some dancing, they find some deadly lizards that could probably kill you in an instant, and they also take cold showers. We also get introduced to Sigourney Weaver's character in the film, Warden Walker, who, it's crazy that the head leader of the camp is a woman? What? It's so crazy, and keep in mind this came out in 2003, so it was so crazy that a woman was in charge and kind of a bad guy, kind of a badass. It was so crazy that they had to do a slow, pan up reveal that it's a woman. Be like, damn, like this is a woman, guys. And so we learn that the reason why all these sweaty little boys are digging holes for days is because the warden wants to find that treasure. There's treasure out there that Kissing Kate left out before she died in Camp Green Lake. And so Warden Walker needs to find that treasure. And she knows it's out there because her grandfather made her dig for treasure when she was just a little girl.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
And at the 1 hour mark in the film, this is kind of when the system starts to crumble. Stanley wants out of the camp. Zero is just pissed off, which makes sense because he's getting bullied by everyone in the film. And so he just kind of kills Tim Blake Nelson with a shovel. understandable, and then just runs away. So because of that, Stanley has to retrieve Zero. And, 1 minute we go from kind of, lighthearted, fun Disney movie. Next minute we go to like full on like Mad Max Fury Road. Shia LaBeouf is on the run. He steals the truck. There's like a chase. It's like, what? Am I watching like George Miller's masterpiece that came out in 2015 or something? Am I watching some sort of like crazy masterpiece that came out in 2015 that's also like one of the best action movies of all time? Am I watching that movie? No, I'm not. You thought I was, weren't you? I'm not. I'm watching Holes. 2003 family film directed by Andrew Davis, director of The Fugitive. Holes 2003 interlinked. Shia LaBeouf interlinked. Zero Zeroni interlinked. Tim Blake Nelson interlinked. But then Shia LaBeouf kind of connects with Zero Zeroni, and Zero's doing okay. He's just drinking sploosh, which is a magic little drink that somehow connects to the past. So I'll believe it's real. And so after that, the film kind of pushes the insane collab of the century between Stanley Yelnats IV and Zero Zeroni, descendant of the Zeroni family, descendant of Madame Zeroni. And so because of that, they use like obvious and kind of unnecessarily fades to show like, oh, this is the connection. They have to use like audio from Madame Zeroni. And so it is a film targeted towards kids, so it does make sense why they're like, we need to, force the prophecy, kind of what's actually happening, how it's connecting. But I think kids are pretty smart and know that this is a legendary collab. The most legendary collab of the century is happening. We're witnessing it on screen. And like we all know, the film has some like crazy coincidences and stuff about fulfilling a prophecy. And what I love is that the movie doesn't take itself too seriously with that stuff. It just kind of does like the goofiest things possible, makes everything somehow connect to each other. And I kind of admire it for doing that, because there's so much like stupid stuff that gets connected with it, whether it be kind of like the future generations coming together, or the deadly lizards, or how like onions and peaches are somehow like really, really, really significant in this universe, because that's how Shia LaBeouf and Zero end up surviving on their own, is because they just eat onions, and somehow onions and peaches are the secret cure for removing foot odor. And Gene Cousineau finds that out, is like, damn, I'm a genius now.
Oh, I don't smell anything.
We don't smell anything. I told you I was on the brink of no stink.
He ends up being like wildly successful, and then calls it sploosh, which is pretty funny because that's what Zero was drinking probably 45 minutes before this moment in time. And if your movie's called Holes, you have to have a happy ending. And that's what they do. Zero and Stanley, they come back to camp and they retrieve the treasure that ended up being buried in Camp Green Lake. And it actually belongs to Stanley Yelnats I. So technically, it belongs to Shia LaBeouf. So he gets that money. He claims that cash respectfully. Because of that, he's like, hey, Zero, you want to be a part of the fam? Adopts Zero into his own family. And the counselors and the wardens get major duped, because they've been running this schemy little camp with sweaty little boys, making sweaty little boys dig holes for days. It's not allowed. They go to jail. And Stanley and Zero end up living in a big mansion, because now they're rich. And so at the end of the day, what this movie is telling viewers, and telling young audience members, that throughout hardships and everything that comes in between, throughout those difficult times in your life, money does solve everything at the end of the day. Because look at Zero and Stanley. They're in a pool, chowing on hot dogs, literally at peace in life, because they're rich now, because their daddy owns a mansion. And I think that's what, we can take away from that. So overall, Holes is a film that's more than just a wacky little kids film. That has so much heart, and the drama, it's amazing. And that's why I love Holes, and I think you should watch the movie. So that's why I'm going to be giving Holes 5 out of 5 stars. Yep, that's right. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you stay tuned for my next video where I review every single movie ever made.